if there was one crop that you could grow in your garden this year, that when you went out there, it'd make you feel like a badass farmer, it would be green beans, because you're going to be harvesting the crap out of them. So basically, you should grow green beans right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast. So a special thank you to our patrons for picking this block of You Should Grow series. We put it out there and they requested them, so this is it. If you guys want any input on the shows or to be a member and to get 2 extra episodes a month, for instance, last week you missed out You Should Grow eggplants, which is a riveting conversation. You should come check us out, for real. We're almost to our goal too, where we will start some kind of chat room for everybody. So come on over and let's meet that goal and build that community. But let's seriously talk about green beans.
Prolific. Remind me to, before we wrap up the show, to ask you a question about vegetables and how prolific they are. Leonard?
Okay, so the only thing, I wasn't going to say anything, but the only thing was when you say prolific, it's like, I think of like prolific like rabbits and mice. Like, that's all I can think about, because, you know, they hump a lot and they make it, like, if you have one mouse.
I can't believe you put that in my head, man.
If you have one mouse, you got 50.
Good
so,
grief.
But yeah, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, and in my notes, I have a whole page of varieties. So I don't know why I put that at the top of my notes, but when to grow in planting space, I'll start off with. So unlike peas, beans are summer crops. They like the warmer weather. So you want to wait until you are past your frost, right? You want it to be, planted in the spring if you can help it, but you got to be past the danger of frost. And if you're planting them later in the year, you want to go about 10 to 12 weeks before your expected frost if you're still planting later in the fall. So you really want to direct sow these. You don't want to start these indoors. We've been using 50-degree night temps. I'm still rocking with 60 degrees and higher. Beans are a little bit hardier, I think, for that, though. You can plant these, and it speaks to my heart because you can crowd these pretty much. You want to plant them an inch deep, and you want to go a couple of inches apart if you're planting multiple beans. I should have opened up with the idea of bush beans, and then they're kind of runner or pole beans, like that's the same thing. So bush beans are your smaller compact plants, and then
I hate those.
And then your runner or pole beans are going to be your vining set of beans, and that's going to need some support. So that's a big fan for trellising, whereas I think bush beans are just a super duper great option for container growing as well.
Can I say something real quick about the spacing?
Yeah, I guess so, as I figure out where my notes are.
Okay. So you said you could, you can sow them like inches apart. I've done that before, and they grow fine. My problem is my trellis collapses.
Oh, wow.
That's my problem. So I've now gone into sowing them like 6 inches apart or more. Less is more sometimes. So they will grow fine. Don't get me wrong. But my trellis just didn't really handle it well.
So I'm doing a combination of like 1 or 2 sets of pole beans, because one of them is a part of what we're growing new this year. So I try to commit to that. And then I'm still doing bush beans. And basically I didn't plant so many bush beans because I have a lot of volunteer bush beans. Like they've self-sowed. And so I'm just going to see what happens with those as well. All right, we're going to go to companions.
Oh, you didn't tell it. So you're okay. So this whole time we've been doing this, you've been given spacings, and I didn't do spacings. I did plant sizes.
Oh, I wonder why rock with plant sizes.
So let me throw that out there real quick.
So first off, that's a great addition. But second off, it's an addition. Like, I don't remember that being part of the formula, but it's been written. Yeah. Plant size.
That's okay. So listen to this spread: 2 to 15 feet tall. So 2 feet tall is obviously bush beans, but it's just funny. Like, if you don't know that there's bush beans, you're like, what the hell is this? I cannot decide. And then how wide they are. It's about 2 to 3 feet wide. So mine go up, like right now at the time of this recording, mine have shot up, and they just look like little, string beans, like just a string. But then they start from the top and work their way down and bush out all the way. So, it can be a little deceiving. You can look at it and be like, I should have planted more. Yeah. And then just trust me, they're coming.
Beans are one of you always see it when you talk about gardening with your kids. It's such a quick and easy and satisfying crop. I love to see beans germinate. It's just really a fun plant. And I never liked beans, green beans in particular, as much as I do now as a kid. You know, it's that classic, like, it's a green thing. But anyway, I'm a big fan of them now. All right. So.
My turn on companions.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So look, everybody. Beans. What do we know? The Three Sisters. Okay. We got it out of our system.
I was so close to doing a Three Sisters planting this year. So close. But go on.
Yeah, not me. Corn, cucumber, eggplants, and radishes. Potatoes, broccoli, cabbage, carrots, kale, and tomatoes. There were more on the list, but as we go through these, I want to remind you that I pick and chose as I did them to not as many flowers. So like marigolds and nasturtiums, you know, they make the lists, but I wanted to keep it to basically foods that you would definitely be planting. There was some, you know, off the wall stuff that I'd never even heard of. I saw in there. So I kind of chose to skip them. Basically, the good thing about the beans is they're friendly. They're just a community plant. You know, they just love everybody. Yeah. So the foes, which is interesting, I'm going to get into this, is beets, onions, garlic, and peppers. The beets will actually hinder the growth of the green bean. So this proves to you that I'm learning something right now as we do these series, because in my bed I have green beans, beets, and garlic, which is also related to the onions. So it's like I'm just like totally messing up, but they're growing good for right now. So we'll see.
Pests.
And I may even have a pepper in the bed. I can't remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not doing too well in that aspect, but you know, they really get along with a lot of things. And if you look at them like beets, onions, and garlic, like you're not really growing them throughout the summer together.
Onions, I'd say, yeah. But
yeah, onions will. I take that back. I misspoke. Onions you will, but like garlic, no, and then peppers you could. So that could be an issue. Which no, never mind. I got my vegetables confused.
Okay. And as you're looking, if you're really doing a deep dive into foes in particular, like I try to make the distinction between what is a problem as the plant grows up versus what is a problem that can create issues in your soil. So those are two different things. And it's hard to find the distinction between those things, but I'm going to move on.
Yeah. Well, you know, I just, you know, in case there's somebody that just signed in right now, this kind of, again, goes into our issue with companion planting, and that includes faux planting. So just keep that in mind as we go through these. But yeah, I agree with you. There's conflicting information I saw too, which aggravated me. But
so I have a whole chart, a whole page of a chart, 2 pages of a chart with pests, and I combined mine. Luckily, I'm going over both of them, pests and diseases. So although you can't read it, whole page of it. So I'm going to start off with what I'm going to go with for pests, and I'm just going to list them off: aphids, slugs and snails, stink bugs, white flies, wire worms, which I've never heard of, cucumber beetles, cutworms, Japanese beetles, leaf hoppers, and Mexican bean beetles. That's what I have for pests, and I have something separate for things like funguses and such.
Let me add in my pests real quick, because I have spider mites again and deer. Specifically deer for this one, which is odd because honestly, once they get growing, I've never had an issue. And, you know, I have issues with deer, but I've never really had an issue with deer once they get up and they go. So that's something to think about. But go ahead.
Do the deer just eat the plant? Is that?
Yeah, they just go through and they'll eat the leaves off the plant. So, and a lot of times they'll eat the leaves off the plant, but then the plant will still come back if it's growing strong enough. But you never know.
Still there,
I don't want to take that chance. I definitely don't want one of our listeners to take that chance.
Okay. So the word is spelled Anthracnose, anthracnose. It's a fungus. It looks yellow, brown, purple, black spots on leaves. So I'm going to leave it at that. Next up, white mold, pale gray, water-soaked areas of stems, leaves, and other parts of the plant that enlarge and develop white cottony growth. I'm just getting so freaked out. Hey, but this is real life here, people. This kind of stuff happens, right?
This is the stuff that we deal with.
And then I have two more listed. Powdery mildew, which, I mean, it's almost beloved because it happens so often, right? So that's a fungus. And then the Mosaic virus. And in the Mosaic, powdery mildew, we know, are white spots on leaves that can basically ultimately sacrifice the plant. Mosaic virus leaves show green mottling and may be distorted, blistered, curled downward, or it may stunt the plants. And so I'm going to go back through, and mosaic virus, destroy infected plants. Powdery mildew, destroy infected plants. The word that I spelled, the fungus, destroy infected plants as far as control and prevention. I mean, the chart's pretty helpful. And this is, again, I'm going to call it a trusted source. I'm pretty sure I got this off of an extension service. And I'm saying destroy affected plants if your attempts at treating it weren't successful. Even if you were able to treat it to save those plants, don't add these kind of plants to your compost or anything like that.
No, you definitely need to. I mean, some people say bag them up and throw them away. Me, I have a lot of woods around my house, so I just take them to a separate area and get rid of them. But you definitely need to do something. Now, I want to remind people that when it comes to diseases and pests, a healthier plant is not as susceptible to diseases, pests, molds, and fungus. So just remember that if you're taking care of your plants, you're already doing a step of prevention. As it is, if you're consistent with your watering, you've maybe fed it and it's nice and strong, then you're doing the right thing. You're not stepping on it all the time, and all that good stuff. So just remember that when you're moving forward in these things, because it's like Batavia said, when it comes to diseases, like, this is the real business. You know what I'm saying? We can sit here all day and talk about, like, oh yeah, we pick all the green beans in the world till our fingers bleed and it's all happy and all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, like, yeah, we deal with this stuff, and a lot of times people deal with it quietly. Yeah. They don't want to say it, so it happens.
Yeah. There's so a couple of things, not necessarily with beans, because you don't want to buy transplants for beans. But in general, when we talk about things like how to save money, this is where you have to really use your discretion when it comes to buying plants that are on clearance, buying plants that may look sickly. Like, I wouldn't buy a sickly vegetable plant. Right. So again, you wouldn't run into this for beans in particular, but your public service announcement, I think I'm adding that note as well. When you're talking about your beans in particular, because in the right conditions, they germinate and produce so quickly. If there's something going wrong with a plant that you have, pull it out. And if you want to replant, do that, but move on from it. Yeah. Don't spend a bunch of time chasing off of, I mean, they're going to produce a lot if they produce, but you don't want to spend a bunch of time chasing after something that you could spend your time, doing something more productive with.
No, you got to make it happen, Captain. So let's talk about harvesting.
Early and often.
Basically. So harvest when they're young and frequently. And the number or the size that I read is about the size of a pencil. Now I wanted to give you what I read, but what I do is I harvest it just before you start to see the bean lumps. So, once you start seeing those bean lumps, it's too late. Now, the good thing about that is the bean lumps, once they go, it's the easiest vegetable to save seed from. If you want to save seeds and you want to learn how to save seeds, this is the easiest to learn, because you sit there and you literally watch it. And you can get, if you put 6 plants out, you can get, I would feel totally comfortable saying 1,000 seeds, no issues. Like, you miss a couple days, boom, they just come everywhere. So, and if you do that, leave the pod on the plant for longer until it's just, you'll get to see it, and you would never want to even eat it. It's not even an option. But you can save the seed that, and this is a perfect entry into saving seeds.
You want to let it dry on the vine. The reason why I said I had volunteers, it's because I let some beans go. It wasn't intentional. I let some beans go. They broke up. And funny enough, it's the funniest thing to me, because when I was moving all of that dirt around, Remember I told you about this when I was replacing the mulch for the front yard garden? I have like lettuce and green beans volunteering in my street side flower bed because that's where I moved that soil to. And now I'm like, oh, of course. So yeah, that's a great example. I mean, the green bean is so cool because not only is it a great plant to learn to grow with and grow for change, it's also a great plant to learn to save seeds, as you've described. And I think it's a great entry into canning, pressure canning in particular.
Yeah, it's one of the and it's actually the reason why we got into pressure canning, because we knew it was so easy. So the first food that my son ever ate was green beans that we grew, and because he ate that, we knew that, hey, we've got to have to can this and figure it out. So that's what got us started, because it's literally, it's one of the shorter canning times, and it's just beans in a jar. That's all it is. It's not mixing anything. It's not doing anything crazy. There's no recipes. It's just boom. And you know what you're going to get. You're going to get the exact same thing you're going to get from the store. And we actually can them in different sizes. So we have our green bean casserole jars, which are the big jars. And then we have our regular serving ones, which are the smaller jars. So you can get creative and do stuff like that as well.
My body is telling me that my attempt to have good posture is weighing on me. So my absolute favorite way to eat green beans is a little bit of oil and pan frying them. There's nothing like fresh green beans from the garden. And I'm just, and I actually rediscovered it in that August challenge, the 31 days of lunch last year. I'm so excited about it coming into this year. I mean, who's excited about green beans? I am. I did note, and Stacy, when we had her on the Backyard Gardens podcast for Seed and Trellis, she reminded me of this. Unlike peas, again, you don't really want to eat a bunch of green beans fresh, meaning raw. So I have some notes here. Raw green beans, if you're eating them uncooked, may lead to nausea, diarrhea, bloating, or vomiting due to the lectin content. And you neutralize it when you cook it, right? So I'm not saying that you can't put a green bean in your mouth in the garden, but just don't take a seed and start eating a bunch of them.
I've eaten them raw before, but I've never eaten like fistfuls of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a whole serving.
I think if you ate a lot of them. Yeah, if you're like, for lunch, I'm having raw green beans, give me a pound. I think you probably have an issue. I want to go over the nutrition real quick. So 1 cup of green beans is 31 calories. It was like 0.1 grams of fat or something, not really measurable. 209 milligrams of potassium, 7 grams of carbs, 3.4 grams of fiber, 1.8 grams of protein, and only 27% vitamin C. So again, this is not one of those high nutrient dishes. I think what it is it's a filler. It's a filler vegetable, which is good to know. I mean, if I was going to sit down, of the 3 that we've done so far, and I was going to sit down and actually eat a meal of a vegetable, it would have to be the eggplant. That was a patron only one. So if you want to see it, you can go check it out, become a patron. But that was the one that had the most nutrient dense to it. So it's just interesting because as something as prolific as a green bean is, and when I say prolific, I mean, you're going to be out there picking green beans all the time.
I have 2 things now. We're running out of time here.
We're running out of time. But as far as like for prolific, it's interesting that evolutionary wise or creation wise, however you look at it, that the nutrition is not as packed in there as you would think. So,
all right, 2 things.
Go ahead, Batavia. You made me stutter.
I know. I'm sorry, brother. 2 things. Rapid speed. In one of the areas I checked,
Batavia's rapid speed.
I am so ridiculous. I know. So 10 different types, because we want to hear what you're growing, what kind of beans you're growing. Blue Lake 274, Contender, Kentucky Blue, Kentucky Wonder, Rattlesnake, Romano, Royal Burgundy, Scarlet Runner, which I know is a popular one, and Tender Green. So if you're growing something else, let us know in the comments. If you're growing one of these, let us know in the comments. I've grown 4 or 5 of these from this particular list.
Yeah. And if you don't like bush beans, put what's up in the comments because I'm with you, baby.
Second thing, do you think you have to pick okra or green beans more often?
I think okra because it's more devastating when you miss it.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, that's what I got.
All right. Yeah, thank you, everybody. And thank you again to the patrons for helping choose these episodes. If you want to be a patron and have a say in the episodes, come join us.
There's links below where you can do that.
Right there.
See ya.
Tell them something good.
See ya. Wait, see you. Well, we're eating green beans.